I never thought I'd reach a moment where the woman I vowed to spend my life with would feel like a stranger walking through the same rooms as me. I always imagined marriage as a quiet rhythm. Shared routines, small laughs over nothing. The kind of everyday closeness that makes the world outside feel manageable. My name is James, 38, and for 13 years I was married to Emily. From the outside, our life had the glossy shine people envy. A home in a peaceful suburb, a friendly dog, 2 reliable cars, and what most called a dream marriage. But even the most beautiful picture can hide fractures. Ones you only notice when the right light hits them. Emily captivated me from the day we met. She was bright, sharp, and effortlessly charming. I was more grounded, steady, the dependable type who kept things moving without much noise. She used to say she loved that about me. For a long time I believed that respect, compatibility, and shared goals were enough to hold 2 people together. But even foundations can erode when one person starts to drift. Her distance crept in quietly. It wasn't some explosive moment, just little things that piled up. Her laughter, once so quick and genuine, felt muted, like she was somewhere else entirely. Conversations became one-sided. Her eyes would glaze over halfway through my sentences. Dinner turned into quiet chewing and glances at her phone instead of shared stories. I kept telling myself it was stress, fatigue, the weight of responsibilities. I tried to help. Cooked more meals, took on extra chores, tried to create space for her to breathe. I believed that if I just cared a little harder, the closeness would return. But you can pour water into a cracked vase forever and never fill it. The moment everything became clear happened at a friend's casual dinner gathering. I walked in and spotted her speaking with Mark, the kind of man who could make a room laugh without trying. The way she leaned into his jokes, her eyes sparkling like they used to with me. It was like watching her rediscover joy I no longer seemed able to give. My chest tightened, a cold heaviness settling in as reality nudged me. Something had shifted, and no amount of quiet devotion on my part could turn it back. I didn't confront her. I just stepped outside, letting the cool air numb the ache building in my ribs. I drove home with a hollow feeling, thinking of the years we'd spent weaving a life together. Those memories, once warm, now felt like remnants of a story only one of us was still trying to keep alive. I realized then that while I was holding on with both hands, she had already let go. The days that followed were filled with a suffocating silence. Emily was courteous but distant, replying with the kind of politeness that signals withdrawal more than respect. Every attempt to talk, to reconnect, was met with a half-hearted smile or a distracted nod. That's when a painful truth began to settle in me. Love that isn't returned turns into endurance, and endurance eventually wears a person down. I started packing small things, not out of anger but because I knew the end was coming. A few shirts, my laptop, a handful of books that felt like anchors to who I was. Each item placed carefully into a bag felt less like loss and more like clarity. What hurt the most wasn't the idea of walking away from her. It was letting go of the version of us I had believed in for more than a decade. Then one evening the truth stopped whispering and finally spoke plainly. I saw them, her and Mark, through the living room window as I pulled into the driveway. A soft touch between them, her laugh drifting out into the air. That single moment made everything sharp and undeniable. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I had become invisible. I couldn't keep loving someone who had already placed her heart elsewhere. So I chose myself. On the final morning I moved with a steady calm. No confrontations, no emotional scenes. I finished packing what little I had left, placed my bags in the trunk and paused at the doorway. The house, once filled with our routines and shared moments, felt eerily hollow, like a place I was only visiting instead of living in. I stood there for a breath, letting the silence settle around me one last time. Then I stepped outside into the crisp morning air. And with each step toward my car, I felt something in my chest loosen. A quiet release, a small reclaiming of the person I had slowly lost along the way. I drove with no real purpose, letting the roads decide for me. Every stop sign, every curve felt like it was peeling back a layer of pressure I didn't know I'd been carrying. Time blurred, and eventually I ended up at a small park I hadn't visited in years, the kind of place I used to escape to when life felt too loud. I sat on the old bench watching the empty swings move gently in the wind, and something inside me finally clicked. I had been begging for validation from someone who had never intended to offer it. That wasn't my fault. That was hers. By the time I drove back home that evening, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wouldn't burn my life down for her mistakes. I would keep the home I worked for, the accounts I built, the future I was shaping. She could hold on to her choices, her lies, the things she thought she hid so well. What I was doing wasn't vengeance. It was reclaiming the parts of myself I had slowly surrendered over the years. Every action felt oddly calm, almost automatic. Canceling things she relied on, logging out of everything that connected us, gathering what belonged to me. Not dramatic. Not hateful. Just necessary. Hours later, the front door slammed open so loudly it cut through the quiet like a blade. Emily's voice echoed through the hallway, shaking with something I hadn't heard from her in a long time: fear. James, wait. Please don't leave. I paused with my hand on the doorknob, still turned away. Her tone wasn't cold or defensive this time. It was stripped bare. She appeared in the doorway, out of breath, eyes wild and glassy. Something in her was broken open. I didn't give her any immediate reaction. I wanted her words to sit in the air, fragile and dangerous. You can't just walk out like this, she said, her voice trembling. There's something I never told you. Something I couldn't say before. Her hands trembled as if she needed to physically shake out the truth she'd been hiding. I turned toward her with a calm she hadn't seen in me in years. The balance had shifted long before she realized it. I had already found my clarity. I'm listening, I said quietly. She swallowed hard, tears clinging to her lashes. For a moment, I saw the version of her I once fell in love with. A softer, honest version that had been buried under distance and resentment. Then she started talking. The confession came out in pieces, messy and vulnerable. Things she had done. Things she had wanted but never spoken. Desires she had chased behind my back. It was human and flawed, but it came too late. I didn't yell. I didn't break. I just absorbed her words, letting them settle like stones in still water. 13 years of shared moments clashed with the reality of how far apart we had grown. When she finally stopped, the silence in the room felt heavier than her confession. She was shaking. I was not. It hit me then: love, trust, respect, they can't be forced back into existence. You cannot pull them out of someone by crying or confessing or regretting too late. They either exist willingly or they don't at all. I had spent too long hoping something would reignite when it had already burned out. I picked up my duffel bag and stepped back. Emily, I said, my voice steady, I've already made up my mind. I can't stay somewhere I only matter when you're afraid of losing me. She reached out as if to stop me, tears streaming down her face, but I gently shook my head and stepped back, creating space between us that was more symbolic than physical. This wasn't cruelty, it was acceptance. I opened the door and stepped outside. The air felt sharper, freer, like it had been waiting for me. Nothing in the world had changed in that moment, but I had. Every step toward my car felt like a piece of myself returning. She called my name again, voice cracking, pleading, but I didn't look back. I started the engine and drove away, not fueled by anger, not seeking revenge, just finally choosing myself. For the first time in years, I felt my chest expand fully, like I could breathe again. No suffocating silence, no quiet resentment, no compromise of my own worth. I realized then that love is never supposed to feel like a cage. It's supposed to be something both people protect, something that burns on its own, not something one person keeps alive alone. And as I drove into the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Freedom.